Hey guys. The other day or a couple of days, Brandon from Brando's Bookshelf made a video asking about advice on how to help make his kids interested in reading or keep reading, all of that jazz. And I wanted to put my 2 cents on it. But first of all, I do not have kids, but I do have my own experience, so I wanted to put it out there if it helps. I don't know, I would just throw it into the internet void, and if it helps, it helps. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Another thing I have to do before getting into the meat of it is that, Brendan, your kids are adorable. They're just freaking adorable, and kudos to you for being a present and interested father. Um, about the subject itself, there's 2 things. I don't have, how to say, I did not have a positive experience with someone trying to make me read, but I had role models, if that makes any sense. So instead of having someone trying to make me read, there was one person that wanted to make me read. It actually had the complete opposite effect on me, because it came from a place that I expected was the best intentions possible, but it didn't know me. So yeah, but I had 2 big role models. It was my mother and her father, my grandfather. They read a lot around me. My mother was always reading, and my grandfather read a lot and had a big library, and he was a very knowledgeable man. He knew a lot of things. He was one of my role models, let's put it like that. Despite all his flaws, and he had many, he is one of my role models. Also, there's a cat here, because of course she just jumped. Anyway, and I think that reading, openly reading in front of me and showing me that reading was a pleasurable thing, a thing that you do on your free time, you do because you like it, you find free time, you make free time for it if you don't have it, was a big help to make me want to read, because I saw people doing that, and I was just like, that must be fun, or else they wouldn't do it. Plus, they read all types of things, and I notice, it's not that people that do not read are not knowledgeable, because they are knowledgeable. But in my grandfather's case, he read a lot, and he was very knowledgeable, and there was a direct correlation there, and I was just like, I want to read all of those books there. I want to be able to do that, and to be able to know those things, and have those conversations that he has, and be so sure of himself. It's not the correct way to say it, but you guys know what I mean. And there's other 2 things besides that, so 3 things. So, showing me that reading was a thing. The second one was, there was no really, how to say, if I picked up a book, especially this happened with my grandfather, he had 2 big bookcases on the living room, and as a child, a very small child, like 5-6 years old, when I started being able to read, I looked at those books and I wanted to actually look inside it. And I remember asking several times, when my grandfather was in the living room doing his thing, asking if I could take a book from the bookcase, if I could see what it was all about, and he never said no. The only time he might have said no, it was not, no, don't take that book out of there. It's like, no, wait, let me take that book out of there, because there's a breakable thing next to it. So yeah, I picked up books with like animals and space things and geography. I remember just sitting there looking at the illustrations because I still couldn't understand most of the words. And one thing that I vividly remember to this day, and that just kept with me, is just like one of those memories that warm my heart, is me asking my grandfather what the book was about. I think it was either a science or spacey book, something related to science, space, maybe mathematics, something like that, because there was a collection that had like lots of different science areas, and I remember that I grabbed lots of those books back in the day. And he gave me a general answer, but then he turned to me and said, "One day you will understand everything that that book is talking." And it was so simple, but it was something that it stayed with me, because he had plain faith that I would understand that book when I grew up. It was a science. I remember there was space mathematics pictures of that kind on that book, and he had plain faith that I would understand it, and I was like, yeah, I will. One day I will grab this book and I will know what all of this means. And that was one of the days that I knew that I would be a reader when I grew up, because it just clicked something inside me. And another thing, it was more my mother that did it. When I actually started having an interest for books and stories and all of that kind. So before even my grandfather said this to me, when I still didn't actually read anything, my mother never, how to say, she never like grabbed me and took me to a bookshop and made me browse and choose and all of that. Like, here, let's do this. Not that there's anything wrong with it, and she never like picked up a book and chose herself a book and then out of nowhere without any basis and just gave it to me. But what she did was she was very attentive to what I liked. She knew that I liked princesses and fairy tales, and she noticed really early that I really liked pictures that were pretty. There's no other way to say it. And this is one of my gripes with childish books, children's books nowadays, is the pictures. They are so ugly. And I remember being a little girl and hating lots of books because they were ugly to the point of sometimes being scary. It was just, some of them even gave me a icky feeling. I had a book once in my hands that was a poems book that someone gave me, and first of all, it was poems for kids that read like contemporary poetry today, so it was just like awful. That wasn't for kids. And one of the poems was about a boy that made a pee on the ground. And there was a picture that I remember to this day of a boy pointing to a yellow stain on the ground. And I was just like, first of all, the way that everything was drawn, it was ugly. The boy was like literally ugly. Even though it had like a very cutesy thing dressed on, the face was literally ugly. And I remember reading that page because it was like one of the first poems on that book, and I read that and I was just like, why am I looking at pee? I don't like this, and I put it away. And I never touched it, and I don't know what happened. Anyway, she noticed that I liked fairy tales, princesses, and that I went for just better books that were very illustrated. The illustrations actually had some time put into it. Actually, people actually look like people, animals look like animals. Even when they are more stylized to be cute, it was still something well made. I think you guys understand. I don't have a hand. It's buried behind here, some of my books. But I think you guys can understand when books have illustrations that show that people put time on them. And instead of she buying the books that she wanted me to read, she gave me books that were about things that I like. So I had lots of princess books, lots of fairy tale books, lots of books that had like anthropomorphic animals dressing as princess and stuff, and just doing things like very nature related books because I really love nature. And I do not actually remember her giving me those books, because there was always lots of books on my house because of her, and since her and my grandfather and her sisters worked in a place that actually made books, they had lots of books themselves, and she already has some children's books, and then she saw what I gravitated to. Even when I couldn't read, I could just look at the pictures, and she got more of that, basically. She never told me to read. She read to me, of course, and when I asked, there wasn't any pressure, let's say, to read or to feel like I should. I just remembered the books being there. They were just there. They were available. Basically, this is what I mean. There were always books available, and there were about topics that I gravitated to. So basically, that's the three things that people in my life did that that helped me becoming a reader, having this passion for reader. So basically, there was books available about themes that I love. They let me pick up books even though they were too much for me. They let me just pick them up and opening and looking at the pictures, and they showed me that reading was a thing that you do, that you find free time to do, and that you enjoy doing. Now, one other thing, last thing, I promise that I'm gonna add is that, well, I don't know exactly everyone's experience. I can't just talk about mine because you guys know that I had dyslexia, and that also had a big influence in the way that I interacted with books through my life, and made me have long periods that I didn't pick up a book because I was battling with words, basically, and with reading. So it might not be exactly a thing that fits everyone, but I think it doesn't hurt to say is that probably there will be times in your lives, in your kids' lives, that they will not pick up a book for months, maybe some years even. That's okay. Just let them go do their thing, especially when the teenage years happen. I mean, I gotta say that there were some periods in my teenage years that I read, but they were very scarce, because when you go to the teenage years, you just let the hormones do their thing, and you do all the bad decisions of your life, and hopefully they are not that bad. And reading comes when things calm a little bit, because this brain in teenage years it goes places. But anyway, there will be periods when they won't care about books, and that's okay. So yeah, this is basically my 2 cents. I actually thought that was pretty nice of you to ask you what we think, and I hope that it helps in any way, shape, or form. To be honest, the first thing that I said, showing your kids that books exist and are enjoyable, I mean, you already do that. And I'm pretty sure that if your kids have any inclination to become readers of any kind, being stories, nonfiction, like very dedicated readers or just occasional readers, if they have any inclination, you probably are already doing everything right to help them on that direction. So at the end of the day, just be there for them and love them. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be fine. And yeah, all the good for you and your family, Brandon. And see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.